speak today. My name is Jacob Steinley. I am 10 years old, and I live nearby in St. Charles, Illinois. I'm in 5th grade at a school called Einstein Academy in Elgin, Illinois. I've been asked to speak a few minutes about how I came to own a Perkins Brailler. I remember that the first time I noticed Braille was when I was playing with plastic toys shaped like letters and numbers. I noticed they had little bumps on them. I was 3 years old. I noticed that each letter had a different pattern of the bumps, but they were all similar in size. I memorized each letter's patterns of bumps, but at that point I didn't realize that those bumps were Braille, or that I was actually learning the Braille alphabet. And of course I was looking at the bumps, not really learning to recognize them by feel as a blind person would. After I learned the Braille alphabet, I started noticing those bumps on signs and in elevators. I knew how to read, and I realized that the bumps on the signs were spelling out the words on the signs. But not always. Sometimes the word in Braille was different from the word that was written. When my sisters went to college, we started staying in hotels a lot when we went to visit them. I loved looking at the signs and reading the Braille. I tried to teach myself to recognize the Braille by feel and not by looking. My parents told me that the alphabet was called Braille, and that people who were blind used this alphabet to read. I looked it up online and learned that Braille was invented by Louis Braille in 1829. Louis Braille was a boy who became blind in childhood after an accident damaged one of his eyes, and the infection that set in damaged his good eye too. He went to a special school in France for blind children and invented a system for writing by the time he was 15 years old. The first edition of Braille was different than it is now. There were both dots and dashes. But as people used Braille, he found that it was too hard to tell the dashes from pairs of dots, so he made changes. In Braille, there are ways to tell letters from numbers and from symbols. As I got more interested in Braille, I wanted to be able to write it, not just read it. I found some programs online which let me type the symbols for each letter, but that wasn't of much value to someone who really couldn't see. I learned that there are Braille slates which can let a person write by pressing a stylus into pre-marked areas on paper. But then I found out that there was a device called a Perkins Brailler. This was a special kind of typewriter that would let you write much faster and easier, and I decided that I really wanted it.
So for those parents out there who might imagine, here Jacob comes to his dad and I when he's 9 and says, "This is what I really want for my birthday, Mom." Of course, a very common thing for a 9-year-old boy to ask for his birthday. But then again, this is Jacob, so we were kind of used to unusual requests sometimes. So, and of course, none of our children had vision issues, so we weren't very familiar. But this is the day of the internet and eBay, and so we went online and indeed found out what this was all about. And of course, the first couple of these things I looked at, I was like, oh boy, that's expensive. But again, with eBay and other similar things, you can find things. And we found a few used Perkins Braillers that were in a price range which was probably reasonable for a special gift. And Jacob's 10th birthday was coming up, so we thought this would be a nice special gift for a 10th birthday.
So I got my Brailler as a present for my 10th birthday. My mom and dad also gave me some books about Louis Braille and Helen Keller. I was so excited. I tried to see what the buttons each did, and I realized that the arrangement was .3, .2, .1, spacebar, 4, 5, 6, from left to right. I had to experiment with how to put the paper in, and I'm still not sure I do that right. And I decided that when I type with the Brailler, I leave a blank line in between lines because that's easier for me to try to read. I use my Brailler to write different things, but what I really want is to find a slate pal or two to write to. My mom tried to help me find a slate pal, but the first couple I tried writing to never wrote back. I don't know, maybe I seem too eager or something. But I'd really like to have a chance to exchange letters with another kid who wants to read and write in Braille. So if anybody out there today is interested in being Slate Pal, just have someone who can use the internet send me an email at steinley.jacob@gmail.com. We can exchange addresses and start writing to each other. I think there are a few minutes for questions if anyone has anything they want to ask me or my mom. Thank you again to the program committee for inviting me here today.
Any questions for Jacob?
Thank you.
Well, here's a question,
So-
Jacob.
Dr. Mauer has one.
Oh, question back here. 1 second.
So you know a lot about Braille already. Do you have any thoughts about maybe being a teacher of blind students? Because that's one of the big things that they do is teach Braille.
Okay, I'm coming back with the mic. I'll get my exercise today.
I haven't thought into that, but that is actually a good idea, I guess.
Well, I want to say I'm really in awe of you. I mean, that is great, just the curiosity and the initiative that you've taken. We have a 13-year-old boy, so you might have just found yourself a Braille pal.
Another question? I have some students.
Yes, we have a question back here.
Okay, this is Amy, I'm a teacher in Springfield, so I'm sure we could arrange some letters coming your way. Do you still only know just the alphabet, or did you start learning some of those different forms, the contractions?
I have learned a whole bunch of contractions.
It's impressive.
That's very impressive.
Yeah. Can he teach me, you Amy?
For instance.
For instance, if you write FR as a word by itself, it means friend.
You're right, you're absolutely right.
And QK means quick, BRL is Braille, and there's a whole bunch of other ones.
You're right, that's right.
You're well on your way.
Jacob, I have a question. Do you use,
I may bring the mic. Oh,
okay,
Are you still looking at Braille with your eyes when you read it, or have you started teaching yourself to do it with your hands?
I am sighted, so I can actually look at it, but I also know how to read it with my hands.
For you.
Very cool.
I think I talked about that in my speech.
One more question back here.
So I know my son is blind and he goes to a school and he's with typical peers. And actually the music students, they're all learning Braille music at all the schools so that when they combine schools in junior high, they'll know how to read Braille music and understand what Christopher's reading. I'm assuming there's probably not another Braille child in your school, but are there programs that he can go to as a child to learn Braille and learn these contractions?
that's very likely.
I'm not up here. I'm in Springfield.
Should know the answer to that.
If you were in Springfield, you could come hang out with me anytime and I would teach you all you wanted to know, but that's a long commute. So I don't know about up here.
Sounds like you're teaching yourself.
Yeah,
Yes.
you certainly
It's
are.
pretty impressive, I gotta say.
It's very impressive. That's why we invited you here, because we
Yeah.
think this is pretty amazing and wonderful.
Yeah, very cool.
I'm sure the teachers at Salt Creek and Albright and Schwartz might be interested in talking to him too.
Is St. Charles within
I-
that
is-
Sasson
How
district?
far is that?
For where? I'm not sure
I'm
what
not-
special ed district St. Charles is in, but we
Uh,
can find that out.
Well, we live,
Park.
Almost directly north of here.
yeah, we're just north of here, right up,
31. Salt Creek is Elmhurst off of 83 and North Avenue, so maybe
Oh, yeah.
30 minutes from you.
yeah, depending on the road construction. Jacob actually went to a summer camp in
Thank
Elmhurst
you.
and it was, I think some days it was a 2-hour commute. But there are plenty of kids who actually live in St. Charles who go to Elmhurst College and commute there every day, so it's certainly a reasonable drive, so.
I'd
Well-
also check out Hadley, the Hadley School for Blind.
Yeah, but I think you have to be 14 to take their
Ah.
courses.
Yeah.
They have certain.
Well, if any of you want, Jacob has a few cards that
Oh,
have his
he
name
found
on
them.
them and his email address that he could pass on to anybody who
Okay.
He's
might
on
have
the
a
ball.
child or a student who would be, so maybe you can
I
like
could
take
definitely
pictures.